Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you all for coming on this beautiful full moon night with an eclipse happening. Um, I'm going to go through my slides and talk to you about information about what I do and how it's done and how your body processes it. I'm going to ask you to hold any questions until the end, and then we'll have plenty of time for me to answer any questions that you might have. Okay? So craniosacral therapy comes from, let's see if this works. There we go. Craniosacral therapy is founded in osteopathic medicine. In the late 1800s, this Dr. Still started understanding, he was an osteopathic doctor, and he started noticing osteopathy works with the bones and the organs. If anybody's ever gone to a DO that's an osteopathic doctor, and they approach medicine differently than an MD does. They approach medicine through all of the different systems in the body. And what Dr. Still first recognized was that when he was holding people's heads, he could feel the craniosacral fluid going around their heads. And when people were having a lot of trauma or anxiety, he would notice that there was kind of like a stillness to it, or there was a blip to it when he was holding the heads, okay? Then came Dr. Sutherland, who took it a little bit further. And more recently, in the 1970s, Dr. Upledger brought it more into the mainstream. Most of the people who have been trained in craniosacral therapy here in the United States were trained in the Upledger method. He's credited with popularizing craniosacral therapy. So I have trained in biodynamic as well as Upledger, and I use it according to what the clients need. Okay, I'm getting used to this, so give me a minute here. Okay, understanding trauma and its effects. So in order for there to be trauma in your body, you have to have a shock of some kind. A lot of people have tailbone falls, which are extremely painful. A lot of people, and that actually affects your craniosacral fluid, which we'll go into in a minute. It can be from a physical injury or an emotional event, and it disrupts the body's natural balance. Autoregulation is a system that's comprised by trauma and can lead to various physical and emotional symptoms. So here we have what life is like these days. So our bodies are wired to be in parasympathetic tone, which is rest and digest, for 80% of the time. How many of you feel like you're in this most of the time? The problem is that we're supposed to be in this 20% of the time when we need to be in fight or flight if something horrible is happening. But in our daily lives these days, there's always the news coming in, and we get hyped up about the wars and all that, and it sends us right into what we call sympathetic tone. We want to be in this 80% of the time, because that's what's natural for our bodies, and it allows our bodies to be in homeostasis and not get ill as often. How many of you, I should have asked you, how many of you know what craniosacral therapy is? That's great. How many of you have had craniosacral therapy? Oh, about the same amount. Okay. All right, so you guys have probably been hearing a lot about the vagus nerve in the world these days when people are talking about, oh, I have to get my vagus nerve working. So the vagus nerve is one of the 10 cranial nerves that come from the brain. Sorry. It helps us to shift directly out of fight or flight. And over time, it can help us to rewire the nervous system by increasing vagal tone and allowing balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic to reach a healthy equilibrium. You can see, like a lot of times when people are having trauma or they're anxious or whatever, they're always talking about how their body's bothering them, right? You get upset stomach, you end up with constipation, or diarrhea or one of that. You can see directly the vagus nerve comes right out of the brain and comes right down into your digestive system. So you can tell when you're having a problem with your sympathetic tone, having too high sympathetic tone, which is fight or flight, if you're having stomach problems all the time. It's one of the ways you can tell. You guys can read this, right? I mean, it affects digestion, heart rate, blood pressure, your immune system response, mood, mucus and saliva production, skin and muscle sensation, speech, taste, and urine output. When I'm doing craniosacral therapy, I generally, if somebody's coming in with high sympathetic tone, this is the first treatment I do is for the vagus nerve, is to get that thing working so that the body can calm down. So let's talk about how craniosacral works. So in this industry, we refer to the cerebral spinal fluid as liquid light because its path is circulating around the brain, down the spinal cord, and back up again. And that happens every 60 seconds while you're alive. There are tides to this. There's a mid tide and a long tide, and when I tap in when I'm touching somebody, and I'll go into that in a minute, when I'm touching them, I feel for the long tide to see how the cerebral spinal fluid is going on its path. And if I feel little hiccups, I know that there's something going on that needs to be attended to. You guys can read this. I mean, improved function, emotional healing, pain relief, and stress reduction. And if you have questions about this later, I'll be happy to address them. So, for the science geeks in the audience, so we have these things called ventricles. There are 4 of them in the brain. And you can see by the arrows the path that the cerebral spinal fluid takes around the brain. While it's doing that, it's clearing out any detritus or things that we no longer need or the brain has already used, and it's a brain cleaner. So it goes from here, down here, and I don't know if you can see, but there are arrows here where it goes down into the spinal cord, and down to the sacrum, your tailbone, and back up again. And as it's doing that, does anybody know what's in your spinal cord besides the cerebral spinal fluid? Thank you, Rodrigo. Your nerves. Your nerves are in there, and they are being bathed by the cerebral spinal fluid. And they're bathed by the cerebral spinal fluid before they go out to the rest of your body. So if there are things going on in the rest of your body, just by accessing the cerebral spinal fluid, it's possible to affect any pain in the rest of the body. So here we have, this is my friend, this is Elvis the pelvis. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but there are little yellow things poking out of here. And those are the nerves that go out to the rest of the body. So this is and you can see it's even down here in the sacrum. And that's why it's really important that the cerebral spinal fluid is working really well, because this is how it goes out. I just wanted to illustrate this a little bit more so that you had a good understanding of it. Here's a partial list of some of the things that craniosacral works with successfully. And I have worked with people with pretty much every single one of these concerns, and they have all done better after they've had a couple of craniosacral therapy sessions. I don't know if you guys, you know people who have these or you have it yourself, but it definitely is very helpful for all of these. these concerns. Yes, I work on babies too. When I'm doing the craniosacral therapy, you can see the hands-on. There are a bunch of other positions. In fact, craniosacral holds can be done on any part of the body. And the benefit of that is that if somebody's in a body cast or somebody's in, you can't access the head for some reason, or they've had injuries that make it so that you can't touch them in certain places, by accessing any of the bony structures in the body, you can actually access the cerebral spinal fluid. So these are just some of the holds. A session lasts about an hour. And the reason I have 5 grams up there is because sometimes people think that this is a massage or that it's something where, I'm clamping on to the head. 5 grams of pressure is what we use when we're doing the holds. So that's about what a nickel weighs. So it's a very, very light touch. But actually, I find the lighter the touches, the more I can feel and help. So it's not a squeezing of any kind. A gentle session uses a series of gentle techniques to remove blocks and restore the subtle movement or pulse in the central nervous system. Okay, so I'm going to go over 2 cases, and these are extreme cases. I want to make sure you know that this is not everybody who I work with has extreme cases like this, but this was like a miracle. Like this past summer, when I worked on Kyler, it was the first time that I was like, this really works in like intense, wonderful ways. Kyler's 23 years old. He's now getting his master's degree at Baylor in Texas, and he's going to be a sports management person. Over a year ago, Kyler was hit in the back of the head with a baseball at full force. And it created a cascade of events in his body that were really, really bad. He was in so much pain. I said to him when he first came in, between 1 and 10, 10 being the worst pain, where are you? And he said, I'm at 11. He said he had been going to physical therapists and personal trainers and chiropractors and all these people, and he wasn't getting any relief at all. Like, this is straight out, he couldn't drive. Vestibularly, his eyes were all messed up. There was pain everywhere in him. And I felt terrible. He's 23 years old, and he was not getting any relief. I worked with him for 2.5 months because he had to go to school. And I worked with him 2 times a week. And by the time he left, he was at a level 4. So, and he said to me, you're the only one who's been able to help me. This is amazing. And he said he's going to see me when he comes back for Thanksgiving. So hopefully he'll be even better, because I helped him find a craniosacral person in Texas too. Unfortunately, he couldn't go with one of my classmates because it was too far away, but he found somebody. So Kyler is, I hold him up. He's just amazing. And he really, really worked hard on getting better. I think he even saw Vito, right? Yeah. This is another case. I changed the name. This is not a picture of my actual client. She didn't want me to do that because I wanted her to respect her privacy. She's a mom of 2 neurodivergent daughters, and she's a high school teacher. She was in a horrific car accident. She was in terrible pain. She was having migraines. Oh, I forgot to mention with Kyler, I actually took concussions out of him and whiplash out of his head. These are things that you can do with craniosacral therapy that regular medicine doesn't attend to. She also had terrible headaches, and I was able to take a concussion out of hers, and then more recently a second one. Her daughters come to me too, and they beg her to come to me because sometimes she just needs to come for herself, and they beg her to come. And they always get off the table and they go, Ardith, you have magic hands. They're so cute. Anyway, Nancy's problems with her side from the car accident have been completely alleviated, and now she just comes to me on a weekly basis for maintenance. So it's wonderful. Oh, one more thing about this. When Nancy came to me, she was seeing a bunch of, she did what we all do. You're looking for help, so you're going everywhere, right? You're going to the chiropractor, you're going to the doctor, you're going to whoever you think can help you. And I would work on her during the week, and then she would leave and she was out of pain. And the next week she would come back in and she'd be back in the same pain. And I'm like, after a couple of weeks, I'm like, what are you doing in between your sessions? She said, oh, I'm going to the chiropractor. And I said, okay, give me 60 days without going to the chiropractor and just coming to see me, and let's see what happens. And all of her symptoms went away within the 60-day period. So my bosses have told me to say this. And if you want to make an appointment, you can just call the fitness desk, which is extension 4 here, and they will gladly make an appointment for you to come and see me. And I don't know if I mentioned this, usually the sessions are about 60 minutes. And I can take any questions. Yes?
What did you do for Tyler that nobody else could do?
So I was able to directly access his nervous system through what I just described with the craniosacral therapy.
I don't understand that.
Okay, so for particularly for his concussions, okay, what I can do is I'm trained so that I can feel into where the concussion is in his brain, and I can spend time and energy affecting that. We affect each other. We affect each other all the time. This is directly onto his head. I could feel it, and what I did is I compressed in my head. I compressed the concussion enough that it opened up and went away. So unless you experience this, it's very hard for me to explain to you what it feels like and how it works. With working with the cerebrospinal fluid, by the holds that I do, I'm able to affect the nervous system. Yes?
So those 5 grams of force that you said,
yes.
How much you do for feeling the...
Right. So the feeling of it, there's no more compression or manipulation of my hands. What it is in the intention of getting in and feeling where the concussion is, and then in my mind compressing it and seeing if the forces in his body will go ahead and compress it and release it. So yes, it's energetic, but it's more than that. I mean, I've been a Reiki master teacher for 35 years. I know how to use energy. This is more than that because you're directly getting into the fluid that's going around the brain. Does that answer your question? Gloria?
So is there a blockage? Releasing the blockage?
Generally, because we are living in this society, we all have stuff going on with our nervous systems. Whether we're watching TV, like I said earlier, with war, or you've had injuries, or you've had, life stuff. I'm sorry. Tell me your question again. I got lost.
Is it sort of like releasing the block? There's a blockage in the cerebrospinal fluid, and you're able to release that so you get the flow of everything moving.
It's more of feeling the blockage in the nerves because the craniosacral fluid is going around the nerves. So I'm feeling where it's kind of getting a hiccup. So I can concentrate on that and it will open up the nerves. Does that answer your question? You've had the sessions. Yes. Dale, yeah.
What what's the evidence behind positive effect on learning disabilities or autism? That was in one of your slides.
So with the neurodivergent young women, what happens is a lot of times there's a lot of anxiety related to autism and neurodivergence. And because of that, the nervous system is really clamped up. So being able to get in there and help the nerves to relax does help the individual.
I'm curious about the timing of sessions, because you said like Kyler, you saw twice a week, I think, and how much time between sessions and what sort of happens between the sessions?
So with this work, it requires time for the body to assimilate it. So I don't see people day after day after day after day. I give the body a chance because we tend toward homeostasis. We tend towards health. So we want to, what I'm doing is I'm kind of guiding the body into that space, and then 1 or 2 days at least before I see them again. I saw him a lot because he had so much going on that and he's young, so his body was taking it in really quickly. Yes.
Are there specific, kind of like in that realm of that question, in that realm of the question, are there specific time frames that you recommend people like, hey, do you want to come in like once a week for, so you start seeing results, or after that, after they feel like really good, then what would be like the maintenance side, I guess, of treatment?
So depending on the intensity of what's going on, I will say either, I'd like to see you weekly, or if there's something that is, has just happened. It's always better to come see me right when something's happened where you've been injured. The sooner the better, because your body hasn't acclimated to whatever the trauma was or the anxiety is. We want not to let it settle in. So they come to me, depending, like with Kathy, she was coming to me, I'm sorry, Nancy, she was coming to me once a week, and she's been coming to me once a week for 3 years. So, but she's got a really high stress life, and so this is one of the only ways that she has of helping herself. So if Kyler were here and he was down to like a 1 or a 0, I would tell him, come once a week, and then as he got more, like there was less going on with him when he showed up, I would go to a maintenance schedule of once a month for him. And then I have many clients who come like once a quarter, just for maintenance. Okay, I'm going to get back to you in a minute. Go ahead.
Things I'm supposed to do at home after to kind of continue the effects. Do you have anything that you do like for yourself, or knowing how the fluids are kind of?
Do I work on myself? Is it?
Do you have any or that can send your patients home or your?
No. So mostly what I want them to do is rest. A lot of my clients want to go out running right away, or they want to go and play baseball and all this stuff, and I say just give it 24 hours and let it be. We have like our medical system, physical therapists, no offense, Vito, physical therapists, it's the hard driving thing that they do because that's how they're trained. I like to get people out of pain first and then have them go to physical therapy and, work out. I think I found that if you do too many things with the body, it gets confused and then you end up with nothing. Your muscles might get better, but you may not feel better. You may still have a lot of pain. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wondered if I'm worried about the flow of my fluids, that maybe when I'm at my desk I could do something like this. So you know what I mean? Like there are techniques, right? That if you're alone on a deserted island, what would you do?
I would swim. I would swim a lot. Yeah, I would swim a lot. I can't work on myself. There are things that I do with the functional body work that I can work on myself, but not with craniosacral, because it's impossible for me to feel the tides in my body because I'm in my body. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
How much does your Reiki expertise help you in this?
So I'm very fortunate that it seems after these 35 years that it seems to be very natural for me. So what ends up happening is during a craniosacral session, you're getting Reiki too. And people are always like, your hands are getting so hot. And I'm like, well, that's the Reiki energy. It just turns on. So you get a double whammy. Yes, Reiki master teacher for 35 years. Here's one of my students right in the front row. Yeah. And I learned it like many, many years ago before anybody even knew what it was. Yes, sir.
I'm 82. I've had both hips, both knees replaced. The only four joints in my body that don't hurt. I'm tired way more than I thought or I think I should be. Can you help me?
I can try. Um, what people sometimes forget is that when you have a lot of pain in your body, it's exhausting because it's taking a lot of energy for you to move because you're in pain. So I can, I've never had let me put it this way. I've never had anybody get off my table and say, well, that sucked. Like, most of the people, there are two people right behind you who have had my sessions too, and they seem to come back for more. It seems to help them.
I don't feel pain, but I feel
Fatigue.
fatigue.
Well, there must be something going on that's creating that. And I don't know. I mean, it could be a plethora of things. It could be your diet. It could be your exercise. It could be your sleep patterns and all this stuff. The craniosacral will help with your sleep patterns. People sleep really well afterwards. But, you're welcome. I'm just upstairs. Yeah. So, you're welcome to come and try.
I mean, I sleep pretty well other than having to get up.
Your wife's kind of, yeah.
I sleep pretty well.
Yeah.
I could sleep better if you slept better.
And you should both come. Get double rewards. Yeah. Yes, Rodrigo.
Would kind of like self-regulation techniques like meditation or breathing practices, because they do help calm the nervous system down, help in kind of like holding the effects that people get from craniosacral therapy?
Absolutely. And not only that, there are other ways of turning the vagus nerve on. Like if you gargle really loudly, it turns the vagus nerve on. So if you're having a lot of anxiety or you're feeling trauma, if you gargle really hard, it turns it, because the vagus nerve runs right down here. So if your throat's vibrating, it's going to vibrate the vagus nerve. So, isn't that, yes.
What are the benefits, like the examples you had were people who've
Extreme, yeah.
extreme trauma. What about somebody who's, for today, everything's kind of okay? I've got seniors in college, so for the moment, life is pretty okay for the moment. But like, what benefits would I get, or would somebody who's relatively kind of?
So I'm going to ask anybody in the audience who might want to share, who has some experience like hers, if they want to talk about their experience. And if you don't feel pressure. No? Nobody's? Okay, Shari, go ahead.
I did have a little trauma.
Well, we all have
little trauma. I had sinus surgery a little over a year ago, and I had a cerebral fluid leak. Because my sinuses, it's just like where they're going in your body anyway. And so I had to be repaired, and I always felt kind of congested, but not really congested. And I went to Arda for I had some aches and pains, just from everyday life in my hip, and she fixed my head too. So yeah, it was really kind of cool. And so then I go every once in a while to come back like a tune-up.
Thank you, Shari. Anybody else?
Well, last week I was walking with a cane, and after 2 sessions, I don't have a cane, so.
This stuff is magical. I'm not going to lie. It's magical.
I
It's
was going to physical therapy for 6 months before 2 sessions. So, yeah.
It's not always like that. I just want to say she's special, but it's it's not always like that. But usually there's relief within a couple days. Sometimes people walk out and they're like, "Oh, I still have some pain." I'm like, "Okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow." And then I call them the next day and they're like, "I have nothing. I have no pain at all." So, yes.
I'm just curious, have you ever run into anybody you couldn't help? Or,
Who I couldn't help?
or anything that they did that prevented your experience from helping them?
Usually the things that prevent me from helping them is they start feeling really good and then they go and do something stupid that injures them again. So that's one thing. There are people who come to me and um, I really sometimes don't know why they're coming to me because they are like, this doesn't work. This doesn't, I can hear it in their body. I can feel it in their body. I can hear it in the things that they're saying. And they're like, oh, that didn't work. And so they leave and they don't come back. But it doesn't mean that I didn't help them. Sometimes people aren't ready to feel better. Sometimes people are attached to their trauma. Some people are attached to their anxiety and their pain. And until they want to work on that, there's only so much I can do. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you.